according with the code which was done in the session. So these are the things, basics around the LMS. There is also a section for support. So if you want to raise a support, like because there is 5 days gap between 2 sessions, like you have 2 sessions on the weekends. The weekdays, if you have any questions, you may want to ask somebody. So you can raise a support ticket over here. So support, in the support, you can pass in your questions that what is a query. Somebody will help you out in the support ticket. So it's a 24-hour, 24/7 support. You can raise tickets regarding your code, regarding any understanding which you need, and that somebody will help you out from that. So the support team is actively looking into these things. Okay, so that's the basics of the LMS. I hope no questions on this, and we can continue with the session. Great. Okay, so every session will have a presentation. So we'll cover this presentation. This will give us an idea that what topics we are going to cover, and side by side, we will also do some practical coding around them. All right, so we are starting with the first module, that is getting started with Angular. So the topics for the day are going to be web application development and architecture, front-end and back-end development, TypeScript, difference between Angular and AngularJS, Angular versioning, comparison between front-end tools, Angular architecture, building blocks of Angular, Angular CLI, and Angular modules. All right, so the objectives for the session are that by the end of the session, we should be able to understand what is web application development, develop thorough understanding of Angular and its architecture, understand Angular CLI commands. So this is a tool which we want to use for creating application, install a new application, and work with the structuring of the Angular components and its code files which are provided in it. So we'll go through the code and the files, how they are structured, and to understand how a project is made. Okay, so first topic is front-end or web application development. So web application development is a very vast domain right now. So earlier, when web application was introduced, like 20 years back, it was just you create some HTML pages and upload them onto a server, which will be used by different people. So it was more of an informational thing where you have more of static pages. Now these days, the applications over here, anything which we are doing is mostly on the web. Like if you want to buy something, you want to order food, you want to go to some place, you book your cabs, you order your food, everything drives from the web. So now this whole web experience is now powered by different tools which are underlaying this whole layer. So you have tools like backend languages like PHP, .NET, Java, Golang, Node.js. These are the ones which are providing the backend for your application. You have the front end. Now front end over here is always built on JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. That's the thing which your browser understands. So any kind of application you're building, it will have these 3 core elements in it: JavaScript, HTML, CSS. So if you're good with these 3, I believe anyone can learn any framework or library in the market for front-end development if they are good with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So now these front-end applications or web applications, now these allow the users to submit data. You can send requests to the servers. Like you want to buy something, you will send a request to the server that, okay, I want to buy a new laptop, and the laptop is this one, and this is my credit card information, and order that laptop with your all the address and all information. You want to buy food, all of it is done through that. Or if you're looking for some information, so maybe you're looking for some Wikipedia pages, you can retrieve data using the web applications now. Now, how does this work? So this whole thing works with different layers in it. So as a user, you are going to interact with the web by using some application. So you can use your browser, you can use your screen readers, you can use your command lines also. So what you can do is you can actually send a command line request to the web or to any web URL and get the HTML from it and understand what's the HTML. If you are very good with coding, that's also something which you can do. But yeah, let's take an idle scenario. A user opens their phone or their desktop and looks for a URL. Now that request will go to a server. So now I'm just shorting it out like quite simply. I'm just saying it sends a request, but there is an additional step where if you're writing google.com or if you're writing amazon.com, how does your browser know that which server is going to connect to? So that is the DNS resolving, where your browser will send a request to the DNS resolver. It will know that, okay, the google.com, when you say google.com, which server has to be pointed in. So these are all the servers which are connected to the internet, and they have their own specified IP addresses. So once the DNS gets resolved, the browser will send a request to that particular IP address and load the application. So when any web page gets loaded, it's always loaded in a form of a HTML. So that's the starting of any web application. The HTML file will get loaded onto your browser. Now browser will see, okay, what kind of code it has. So maybe it's a complete HTML file only. There is no interactive code from JavaScript. But if you have some JavaScript code in it also, it will start processing that JavaScript code, processing the CSS code in it, and load the complete application. Now your server also is also going to be used for getting data from the database or any file system you have. Like when you go to any social media platform, let's take example of you go to Facebook. So when you check your wall, that wall, all the items on your Facebook wall, they are not created as HTML. They are created as from a data which is already in the database. So there are different forms of data transmission which are done between the server and the database that gets loaded on the browser, and the browser then, by using JavaScript code, it will start creating HTML on the runtime. So that's done by using frameworks like Angular or different libraries like React.js or jQuery. So this I would say this domain of creating web application has lots of things in it, and we are going to focus specifically to how Angular will fit into web application requirements. So in the front end, we are going to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. In the back end, there are different features which the backend has to implement. Now, because we are not covering backend technologies, like we are not learning backend, so we just understand that what is the role of a backend. So a backend will provide you communication with the database. It will provide you read and write of the files, like you stored some files on the drive and you want to read those files back or download those files. You will be this will be done by the server, and also provides you a secure network. So it's very important thing, like something which secures or encrypts your communication between the client and the server, the application and the server, and also provides you ways of authenticating a user that only a specific user should be able to get that access. So all of these things are maintained by a server. Now, next topic is web application architecture. So now this is a kind of an evolving set over here. So first, when internet was launched and you have applications created, they were called now these days those kind of applications are called as traditional or multi-page applications. So what is a traditional or a multi-page application? So it sounds quite old kind of thing, that it's very old kind of a setup. Yes and no. So traditional applications are still used in some cases where you have content application which is very heavy with content. It's better to use a traditional approach or a multi-page application approach, where every content page is actually a HTML file. So how does a web browser works with content? Let's say I'm just creating an example over here. So you load a content application. Let's say this application name is content.com. It has all the news and everything over here. And when you send a request, it will load a file from the server that will be pointing to the HTML file over here. So there will be an index.html file which gets loaded when you are saying I want to go to content.com. So it's going to be connected over here. Okay. Now on this site, there is a navigation and you navigate it to a different page. So let's take example. We navigated to a page which is called as news. Now, when I'm going to the news page, what happens is uh, the news is a new content. It has to be loaded. So in a multi-page application, when you navigate from your browser, you will say content.com/news. Your browser will again send a request to the server. It will say, okay, I know that the news articles are there, but the news articles are on a different URL that is called as news.html. So it will send a request to it. It will load. It will first send a request. Sorry. It will send a request to it. Why this is stuck like this? 1 second. Yeah. So it sends a news request to the news HTML from the server. The HTML will get loaded on the browser and then shows the content to you as a user. Now, this is a multi-page application. So any page you're navigating, it will request for a new HTML from the server. So now if you go to news and you look for news for India, it will send a new request to the server saying, okay, give me news for India, and probably there is a page which is called as news-india.html on the server, and that gets loaded. So over here, it sends a request and loads the request back. Okay, so this is how a multi-page application work, where every request or every content you're looking for that is directly related to a HTML file on the server, and that will be loaded on your browser and shows the content to the user. Okay, so now, okay, so I got a message from Garima. I'm not able to see the explanation. Page 9 is opened. So are you able to see the draw.io screen? Guys, just confirm me. Okay, so Garima, try to log in again. Sometimes because of the network delay, the screens get stuck. Just try to log in again and see if it works fine. So I'm on the screen which is draw.io, but I will move now to the LMS. Okay, so now this is what we cover with traditional application. So where every content is related to one static HTML page on the server. Now, this approach was working perfectly fine. It still works fine, but now some scenarios are little advanced these days. So now there is an improvement on top of it. On the traditional approach, there is an improvement. We call it as a Ajax web application. So what is the Ajax web application? So Ajax web application is the same example, but little more advanced in it. So let's say you created this content page. Let's write this kind of article. So you have this article which was working for content.com. They were showing the heading and the article detail. It was working fine, but they decided that we also want to have a stock ticker on the application. Okay, so that's a new improvement which they want to implement, and they want to implement a stock ticker over here. So now anyone who has experience with stocks or a stock market, we know that stocks are very dynamic. So you have the stock market ticker over here. Now over here in the stock market ticker, I want to show some stocks over here. So let's say I want to show Apple stocks. I want to show Tesla stocks over here. Now in this case, stocks are going to change every few seconds. Even in a second, sometimes the stock's value change a lot. Okay, so it's a very common thing with the stock market. But on the other side, if you see the heading section over here, this may be a news. This is a news article we have, and the left side, the news article is not going to change. If somebody has written a news, it's not going to change every second. It's just something, maybe there is some mistake in the news, or there is a new update on the news, then only the news article will change. But the stock content has to be changed every second. So how will this kind of application work? It's a kind of mixed environment. So what we do is, we create HTML, we create these pages similarly like this. Every news will have their own. So if in this case, every news article which you're creating will have the same HTML pages to be implemented. So they will have their own separate HTML pages. So let's say this one, we have this one as called as news1.html. This will be a news2 and a news3. Okay, so how do they know that they have to update the stock ticker now? So what we do is, we use a API which is available from the browser, that is called as the XHR API or XHR request, which allows you to send HTML request, or it allows you to actually send HTTP requests from your browser when the HTML has been loaded. And these requests are sent using a asynchronous code. That means even if your page is running, you can send request to the browser, or from your browser to your server, and get data from it, and still the page will be there. It will not refresh. It will be asynchronously getting data from the server and load that data on your browser. So this kind of a feature is not implemented directly in the code. Like, there is no magical code in HTML which does this for you. All of this has to be done. All of it has to be done using JavaScript code. So what you do is, you will create some widget over here. So we'll say this section over here is a widget. Okay, so this widget is going to be controlled by a JavaScript code, and in that JavaScript code, we're going to write that make a HTTP request and get data from the server and load that onto the page over here. So how this will work is, let's consider we have a server over here. The server has these 3 files in it. Okay, one second. So the server has 3 files in it, which are going to load the news articles. From here, and here. Okay, so this server will load the HTML, but there will be another item which will be created in the server as some REST APIs. So REST APIs are URLs or content which is available on the server, but it's not in a form of HTML. So what? Okay, so it's not allowing me to create a line over here. We'll just, one second. So we'll say, yeah. So for these widgets, how they are going to get the data is, there are going to be some JSON based APIs. So there are going to be API based on JSON, and that JSON based API will be connected using JavaScript code to these widgets. Okay, so all of these widgets are going to get the data from this JavaScript API, and they are going to get this data asynchronously. They will not refresh the page. So even if the user is reading the article, internally the API can be called by JavaScript code and load the data into the application. So that's how widgets work on a web application. So this was introduced by Google. So the first implementation which was implemented for widgets was Google Maps. So uh, Google Maps, when you scroll, like these days when we see Google Maps, we see, okay, we can just move here and there, and it will automatically load the images for that specific area. But if you have used Google Maps or try to use any map application 15 years back, it would be that it will have some buttons And every time you click on a button, it will refresh the page and load a new application for you or a new HTML for you. So it was very time consuming, not a good experience for the end user. And then Google decided that, okay, there is a feature in our browsers which is called as AJAX or XHR requests, and use that to load the data even when the user is interacting with the application. So whenever the user moved from moved the map to a specific location, the internal JavaScript code would send a request and load that data into the map and build a much better experience for the end user. Okay, so later on, then everything started implementing using different widgets. Okay, so a widget over here, I got a question like, what is a widget over here? So widget is what we can say a widget is. It's a small kind of it's not a whole application. It's just one small feature on the application. So let's take this application example only over here. So this LMS which we are seeing, this LMS, this on the content on the sides, like I will show you here. I will highlight this over here. So all the content which is over here is all static. Okay. And this area which I am presenting to you, this is the widget which loads a presentation file and shows you the content. Okay. So that is a widget. So widget is not a whole application. It's just part of it and does some functionalities independently from the main application. So even if I am clicking on anything outside of this, like if I'm clicking on these links on the side, the main application makes changes, but the widget for loading the presentation over here will remain same like this. And if I change anything on the presentation, it will be independent and will not impact anything on the main application. So it's a part of your application. We cannot say that it's the whole application, but it's just a small part which will combine together and create a bigger application for you. Okay. So any questions till now? Great. Okay, so the next thing is a single page application. So single page application is a kind of application which is completely managed by JavaScript code. So if I say completely managed by JavaScript code, does it have HTML? Yes, it has HTML, but the concept over here is a little tricky. So when somebody reads this line single page application, they will understand that, okay, this application has only one page in it. It will not have multiple pages. There is only one screen, and on this one single screen, you have to do everything. That's not true. That's just a, a confusion which we get from these words. A single page application is designed by using tools like React, Angular, Vue.js, or if you want to implement a single page application by yourself, you can do that too. Then what is the difference between a single page application and a multi-page application? So we know multi-page applications have HTMLs for every content. A hybrid application over here is having multiple pages, but it has a widget in it which is controlled by JavaScript code to do different features. Now over here on the extreme right, we have application which will load everything. Anything which you are loading on this application will be controlled by JavaScript. So here, how it works is it will send a request to the server. Still, it needs to send a request. Now it will say, okay, I will send a request to the server. This is my server on the side, and I will send a request to it, and I will load the index.html from here. Okay. So now this index.html is your starting point. We always need a HTML file to start a web project. We cannot start any website without a HTML. So we call it as index.html over here. That's the starting page. That gets loaded. Now, once that gets loaded, in a single page application, the HTML file does not have any content in it. There is very minimum or literally 0% content in this file. Okay, so even there is no template in it, there is no HTML structure in it. So how does it loads the content? So the next step would be, once this page is loaded, it has references to different JavaScript code. to load code from Angular framework, the JavaScript code for the Angular framework, and start the application. So what it does is, next, it will send another request and load the Angular framework for you. You'll say, okay, this is the Angular framework, and this is all JavaScript code. Okay, so this is completely a JavaScript code which it sends a request to, and now loads it over here. So that gets loaded, and then once the Angular code steps in, it will start loading different features in it. So in Angular, there is a concept of components, which are kind of building blocks for a page. So what Angular framework will do is, it will run a JavaScript code and create everything which you need on your application using JavaScript only. So it's all going to be dynamic, and as you load the framework, it will start loading up different components in it. So even if you need to create a header, it will be created using a component. If you need to create some content, like let's say you are creating a content application, so it will create a content over here and put some heading and text in it and show the content. If you need a navigation, that will be also a component which is going to be created using JavaScript code, and that will have the template and everything related to it in this file, this code. So everything over here is going to be created using JavaScript. Now the problem over here would be that how will the content update in that case? We cannot put all the content from our database into the JavaScript code. So what we do is, like now in this case, every component which we are creating, or this complete framework, it allows you to send requests to your server, and on your server you will have some JSON APIs. So we'll say I will implement some JSON APIs. These are going to be the ones which are going to provide us data. So if I want to get some news, so I'll create an API called as news, and when my application loads, I will send a request from here. So I will say, when this component gets loaded, send a request to the JSON API and load the content from it in the container over here. So in this approach, what we're doing is we're kind of mixing the two approaches which we understood earlier. So in the Ajax driven approach or the widget driven approach, we had a mix of HTML and JavaScript. But in this one, everything is implemented using JavaScript, plus everything over here is going to be a widget. So even when you have a header is going to be called as a widget or a component. So it's kind of a renaming which you have to learn, that a widget is also equivalent to a component. So we're going to call it as a component. A container for showing some news articles, that is also going to be a component. Component for implementing navigation, everything is going to be a component which we are building. So as a front-end developer, when you get the designs from your design team, you will decide that what components do I need and implement that in your application. Okay. Okay, so I got a few questions. Let's go through them. So from here they are starting. So what is use of JSON and what is JSON? Okay, so that's a topic which we have some detail in, we have to cover in detail later on, but yeah, I will just give you a brief of it. So JSON means JavaScript or JS object notation. Okay, so this is the full form of it, JavaScript object notation. So what this means is, it's a kind of a way of transmitting data. So when you send a request to the server, what you're doing, you're doing a transmission of data. So you're sending a request to server. Server says, yes, I know you're looking for this content, and I will send you the HTML for it. So how does HTML looks like? You have a HTML structure which will say, okay, I have HTML content, and in the HTML content you will have different div tags. In those div tags you will have paragraph tags. I'm not creating a valid HTML, I'm just giving you an idea that you have this kind of a structure which provides you the details which you're looking for. So maybe you're looking for some articles, So this is how the structure will be returned from the server. So it will say, okay, yeah, this is the content I have. Now, this kind of tags which we create with HTML, these are styled, or these are called as XML styled content. Why? Because XML is a way of creating tags, and in those tags you define different properties and values. So HTML is equivalent to writing a XML typed content. Now, the problem with this kind of a code is that it's very heavy to read when with JavaScript code. And even with any kind of other language, like if you have .NET or if you have Java, if you have a HTML content, you have to first parse it. Parse means that you have to go through all the elements in it, create a tree of elements, and then understand what this tree of data means. So it's quite complicated, and it's not easy to handle. So roughly around what I remember is around 10 years back, the JSON notation was introduced. So what it does is, in JavaScript, there is a concept of objects and arrays. So what we do is, we create an object, and in this object, I will write a property in it, a key in it. I'll say message, and I will write the message value to be hello world. Okay. So for us, like as a normal person, it may not be very easy to understand what this means, but it still is clearly understandable that I know that, okay, you are looking for a message which is actually the value of hello world. Okay. So this kind of a structuring is called as JSON, where you convert this data into a string and send it from your server to your browser. The browser will run some JavaScript code and convert this into a JavaScript object, and you can write different methods on it or consume this data directly in your templates. So this is JSON. You can read about it more. I can give you the link for it, JSON MDN. So most of the things which you have questions around, you can go to MDN, and they will give you quite good detail about it. Okay, so what's the next question? Next question is REST API. Yes. So over here, a JSON API, which I'm writing over here, I can call it as a REST API also. Why I am calling it as a JSON API? Because I'm assuming something which gives me a JSON data. A REST API, when you say REST API, also forces you to implement URLs in a specific way, but not all the projects implement that. So that's why I was covering that. Okay, there is some API which provides me, or some URL which provides me JSON data, and I will use that in my application. Okay, next question is JavaScript or TypeScript. Even though if you're writing some code in TypeScript, that will still be compiled into JavaScript. Your browser does not understand JavaScript code. So anything which you need to run in your browser will always be written, like till date, it will be written in JavaScript, HTML, and CSS only. So your TypeScript code, although we are going to develop code in TypeScript, it gets compiled using the TypeScript compiler into pure JavaScript, and that is loaded into your browser. So it's always the JavaScript code. Okay, any questions now? Okay, so I got a question. In a web page, there is some static content, some content which is dynamic on the basis of what page is getting reloaded. Like, is there a time limit? So kind of technically there is no time limit into it. Thing is, it depends on how your server is going to handle it. The server will always implement some kind of a timeout. If you're sending a request and it's not able to process that, it will do a timeout. But it most of the time it depends on what kind of data you have. So in our case, the previous example where you have an article about some news article and you have a stock ticker. So it's up to your business that do you want to load the stock ticker every few seconds or every few minutes or every few hours. So HTML, JavaScript, CSS, it does not controls that what data has to be loaded at what times. It's you who has to decide that what is the time I want to implement in it. Okay, so I got a question. What is the difference between REST API and free API? Okay, one second. What is AJAX? Why will browser understand JavaScript, not others? We are developing the browser to understand. Why we are not developing browser to understand other languages? What is the background? Okay, so and last question is why are we not able to see questions on the other folks? Yeah, so that's something which is limited with the Shashank. This is something which is limited with the platform. So I cannot, it doesn't share the questions which are sent by others. But yeah, this is a good question. Why browser will not understand other languages than JavaScript? That's completely dependent on the browser vendors. So if you are using a Mac machine, your Mac machine has two browsers on it. Chrome is something which you will generally load on it. Like I'm a Mac user, but I have Chrome on my system, and it comes with Safari. Safari is from Apple. So okay, we know Safari is from Apple, Chrome is from Google, and Microsoft has Edge. Now, who is the creator of TypeScript? The creator of TypeScript is Microsoft. So if they want to add support for it, they have to go to each browser vendor and tell them that, hey, we want to add support for TypeScript into your system. And it depends on how the browser vendors interact and how this goes out. They may not add support for it. So there has been a lot of talks that Microsoft Edge, the latest browser from Microsoft, will support TypeScript natively. So you can directly run their TypeScript code over there because it's from Microsoft. So Microsoft does not have to convince another vendor to add support for it. But if you see JavaScript, JavaScript is a kind of a open standard. So when JavaScript was introduced, it was a language implemented in Netscape, and other browsers were not allowed to use it. But what they did is they started copying all the features from it and implemented their own versions of JavaScript into it. So as a user, as a developer, you're writing JavaScript code, but it will be understood in a different way on different browsers. So this was a very big problem if you have worked on web 15 years back or 20 years back. Different browsers will implement different features on it. So then the ECMAScript community was introduced. ECMAScript keeps a check on what is supported in JavaScript and how the browser vendors will actually implement those features. So if you go to ECMAScript over here, so ECMAScript is the community which we can search for TC39. So this is the community which defines that what features your browser will have, your JavaScript code will have, and how they are implemented. Okay, so that's why most of the browsers will support JavaScript because it's an open standard. Anyone can pick this and start implementing the JavaScript code or how the JavaScript code runs on their JavaScript engines. And that's why JavaScript is very popular. And yeah, one more important thing, every vendor has their own JavaScript engine. So like Chrome has V8, Safari has their own JavaScript engine, Mozilla has their SpiderMonkey JavaScript engine. So even how the JavaScript code is processed on the browser is completely different. So that's why there is no common standard that, okay, everyone should implement TypeScript on it. Okay, so I think this answered your question. So what is AJAX? So AJAX is a way where AJAX, the full form AJAX is asynchronous JavaScript request, where you're sending an asynchronous request. So let's see let's do one thing. Is this page? Yeah, this page is actually like this. Okay, so let's take an example. Like when you load this application on your system, there are different links over here. So when you have, let me show you over here. Let's check the network. Okay, so when this application loads, it loads this HTML page on the start time. So see, it's sending a request to tc39.es and this page gets loaded. All right, so this is a HTML page. So if I go to my HTML tab also over here, that's the doc tab, and you can see there is a document loaded over here. Now let's go to some other article in it, like some other page. So when I go to the other page, you can see what happened is the previously shown up page is gone and it loaded a new HTML over here. So in this behavior, if you do the same thing on your system, I can show you over here with the network throttle. Let's say I am on a very slow network connection and I'm going to this page. Oh, it's quite actually loaded. Let's load some other page then. Let's load this one. So in this case, you will see that page will go out and it will show some white screen and then immediately the page will show some other content. So this is how your browser works. So whenever you're sending a request, it sends a request to load a new HTML. In that moment, when it reads the new HTML and shows that on the user, there is a little delay in processing it and it shows a white screen in some scenarios. So the solution to this is, instead of navigating the user from one page to another page, we can load the data required using Ajax. So Ajax requests are asynchronous. They will not block anything on the client side, like on the user's end. The user will not even feel that the browser is sending requests to the server. So I will show you over here. So let's go to Google and over here, let's search for TC39 or anything over here. Okay, so if you go to the network tab, let's look for ES6 like this. So you can see when I'm typing over here, let's say JavaScript, and yeah, I have to actually go to all, not all, actually fetch XHR. Over here, I'm going to write JavaScript. So when I write anything, I'm writing the text on the input control, and it shows some options to be loaded over here. So this is controlled using Ajax, where it sends an asynchronous request to the server and asks the server that, do you have data relevant to it? So over here you can see it has sent this complete information and gets the response from it that, okay, this is the data which I have and you should show this data onto the screen for the user, and the user sees this content. So this is an asynchronous request which has been sent. So that's why Ajax is required for getting data loaded on the system without interfering the user experience. Okay, I think there's the last question over here. Why is this required? I think is Ajax required to learn Angular? I will be covering how this whole thing works on the server side, so don't worry about it. If you don't know, it's fine. I will be showing that in the detail. Okay, so next question which I got is why we use TS in Angular, but why not JavaScript? I will cover that in the detail, like once we see the code, how it has been structured, then I will show you the features, why it has been done. All right, I hope there is no other questions and I've answered all the questions. Okay, so questions related to what is difference between JavaScript and TypeScript, I will answer them later. Okay, I got a question, what is XHR? So XHR is the API. It is a way how your browser will send a request to the server. So you can look at this API, how it works, and yeah. So this is something which you have to go by yourself. This is something I hope everybody has a little bit understanding of by themselves. All right, so let's continue. So we have seen what is a single page application. Now, example of a single page application is your Gmail, where you type in something like when you need to compose a new email. When you click on the compose button, it pops up a new form at the right bottom, and you can write some email, and still the page which is running to show your list of emails, it will still continue to show or load any emails, and also gives you interface to write some new emails and send to the user. And when you send a request, send an email, it does not refreshes the page. It still keeps you on the same page, but sends a AJAX request and updates the UI for you. So what is Angular now? So Angular is a client-side framework, or it allows you to create web applications. We call it as a framework because it has all the features which are required for creating a web applications built into itself. So like if you want to implement an AJAX request, you don't have to learn jQuery, or you don't need to learn any third-party plugins for it. It's all built into Angular. Angular provides you the classes for it, different methods for making API calls. If you want to write unit test cases, automation testing, all of that is inbuilt into it. If you want to understand how data models work in Angular, Angular has its all set up inbuilt into it. So as an Angular developer, you don't have to worry about that, okay, uh, how a particular feature is implemented. It's all been thought through already by the Angular development team, and they have given you the right tooling for it. So as a developer now, I just have to think that, okay, I have to build something. I need to store some data. I know how to store that data in a model. I want to break my application to smaller chunks. I know I can create components for it. I want to make an API call. There is a class which handles API calls for me. So all of these things which are day-to-day used by a developer is all built into the Angular code. So that's something which is very helpful for a developer. So yeah, and Angular uses TypeScript instead of JavaScript for developing the application. So now coming to TypeScript. So TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. So any JavaScript code is also a valid TypeScript code. Then why we use it? So the reason is, like I showed you TC39 over here. Okay, so this is the TC39. If you go over here, there are going to be some specs which are going to be proposed. So there are proposals over here like stage 1, stage 0. So these proposals are something which the developers have given. Like even you can also propose some feature that you want to have some kind of improvement in the code. So you can see there are these features which are proposed. So these are not code, these are just a documentation of how a feature should work. So we can just pick any of these like module keys, and the developer who is proposing this, it can be a group of people also, and they're proposing this feature to be implemented in JavaScript. Okay, so once a feature is implemented, it goes to the finished state over here, or this proposal is finished. Now let's take an example of array.includes. So array.includes were introduced in 2016. So this was like expected that this will be published. Now if you scroll down, you will see there are lots of other features also which have been finished. And can I use them in my browser? Maybe, maybe not. Why? Because again, the JavaScript engine in your browser is controlled by the vendor. It's not been controlled by JavaScript. So there is no open compiler that every vendor has to use. There is the JavaScript browser vendors. So the browser vendors will write their own JavaScript interpreter, which runs the JavaScript code on the browser and gives you the experience. So it's up to them. So maybe Google Chrome says, okay, I will add this proposal for reading a relative indexing of method, this at method or anything. And Chrome says, I don't want to implement it. It's just waste of time. And Safari says, okay, I will implement it. So what will happen is some features will be introduced in some browsers at some point, and some features may not be introduced. Now, let's assume that it has been a very big problem with Microsoft Internet Explorer. So we know that Internet Explorer is maintained by Microsoft, and they maintain Windows also. So they have to keep that Microsoft Internet Explorer running for a long period. But in that case, they didn't update the new features in it. So a lot of features in JavaScript were not even implemented till the last day when Microsoft Internet Explorer was deprecated. So in that case, would you like to not support all those features in your development code? No, I will not like that experience. Like something which works in Chrome, Firefox, Safari, but it doesn't work in IE. So what you do is you use these kind of tools like TypeScript and Babel. So TypeScript, what it does is it allows you to use all the latest features which are being approved, mostly approved on TC39. Not all, but yeah, it tries to pick out all the latest features and implement them in TypeScript code. So how does TypeScript able to handle something which the browser doesn't handle? That is done through transpiling. So see, any feature which is introduced in your JavaScript code, it's mostly a sugar coating of something. Means that that thing is being implemented in a some way that the browser can still handle it, but it needs to write some special code on top of it. Let me give you an example of it. So if you want to run or try out TypeScript code, you can go to typescript.lang. It's called as typescriptlang.org or something. Yeah, typescriptlang.org. Over here, there is a playground. Okay, so let's say this is using the latest version of TypeScript, and I want to try some code over here. Okay, so on the left side, okay, so it's not, yeah, it's going to expand it like this. Okay, so I've cleaned everything. On the left side is your TypeScript panel, and on the right side is your JavaScript code which gets compiled. So let's write const, and I'm going to create a variable array, and I'm going to write dot at. Okay, let's say like this. Or I can write includes. There are lots of methods on the array which we can use. Okay, like this. All right, so now this code works kind of same. There is no difference in it, but let's go to the settings. One second, there would be some way to configure it. Yeah, so over here you can see the configuration. So I'm using TypeScript. I'm using a target. So target means that what version of JavaScript you want to support. So you are going to write TypeScript, but that will be compiled into a JavaScript version. So every year there is a new version of JavaScript which is created that is using the ECMAScript recommendations. So right now it's ES 2022, but let's move to ES3, which is roughly 15 years or something like that old. Okay, so when I move to this and close this panel, when I write something, so you'll get an error that this method is not supported. So what you can do is with TypeScript, you can actually compile your code into a version which is going to be supported on an older version of your browser. So it's kind of not properly working over here, but yeah, I will show you the output of this code once we started the Angular. They have changed something in this, so it doesn't shows the compiled code over here properly. But when we are going to show the Angular code, I will show you how it works. And what it does is it allows you to support any previous version of JavaScript 2. So even if you're using a latest feature, it will allow to use it will support any older version of the JavaScript code. Okay, so I got another question to compatibility only. So is Angular supported on all the browsers? So it is only supported on all the modern browsers. So if you go to Angular site, they have recently removed the support for Angular 11. Oh, sorry, Internet Explorer 11. So Internet Explorer is not supported. all the other modern browsers are supported. So you can use it on Chrome, Safari, Microsoft Edge, Firefox, Opera, they all support it. But the latest version is the latest version of Angular is not supported on Internet Explorer 11. So if you have a project which is based on, has to be supported on Internet Explorer 11, it will not work, even on Internet Explorer. Okay, so I will show you the demo of how this code gets compiled, but yeah. So what this does is the TypeScript compiler compiles your latest fancy JavaScript code into a version which is compatible with most of the browsers. Okay, so this is the compilation step. It is done through the TypeScript compiler. So you write TypeScript file, it gets compiled into JavaScript. So why this kind of a lengthy process is used? Why not simply use JavaScript? The reason is, I'll show you an example over here. Let's say, just zoom in. Let's say I am creating a constant a, and a is a string. Okay, so JavaScript is a dynamic type language. So normally, if I was writing, actually this should be a let. Let's say I'm creating a variable let, and anytime later on in the code, like let's say I have written like 100 lines of code or 1000 lines of code over here, and after 1000 lines of code, I am able to see that okay, I can just write a is equal to a number like this. So this will be a big problem for me. Why? Because I will not realize that something which was actually coming as string, I've converted that into a number. And a common problem with this kind of a scenario is you're writing a string, but the string has value in it, which looks like a number. So over here, you will see that, okay, yeah, it is a number, but no, it's a string which is equal, which has a value of a number. Now, when I assign this string into a normal number, TypeScript code will give me an error that you have a value which is type of a number which is not assignable to a string. Why? Because I have created this as a string, but I'm assigning a number value to it. So TypeScript adds additional type checks into your code. So now I can say this value is going to be a string, and I can define a type. So this kind of a code is not supported in JavaScript. If you write the same code in a JavaScript file and run that, it will just give you error that what are you doing with this colon string over here? What is this kind of a code? It doesn't understand it. So you can define different types, and you can also say that I have a union type. So it can be a string or a number. Now the error goes away. So it assumes that, okay, it's going to be a string or a number. It's a string on the starting, but it becomes a number later on. Now, after a few lines of code, if I say this is a Boolean value, this will again give me an error that you are assigning a Boolean to a type or a string or number. So TypeScript does this all type checks for you. In this basic example, you may feel that okay, it's not worth it, but on large scale application, it is actually worth it because it helps you also kind of write the documentation for your code. Like in our example, I'll say I have a function which returns a message, and in this message I have to pass in a name, and the return of it is going to be string, which will be name. So it will just say hello and the name of it. So now in this case, if I give you this function, you don't know what is the return of the function. Like if I just give you a file and I do not let you access what is in the file, and just give you a file that okay, this is a function you have to call, and you know by yourself, like I don't know, figure it out that what this function does. So it's very hard for us. But in TypeScript, I can say the parameter over here is going to support a string value, and the return of the function is going to be a string value also, like this. So in this case, it also helps you use this function. Now when I'm going to use this function, it will give me a hint that it supports this function has a parameter which is type of a string, and the return of this function is going to be a string value also. So I can write like Praveen over here, and it returns a string value which will be the output of that code. So these things do actually help a lot in large scale applications. So that's why TypeScript is supported in Angular. Even if you see React now these days, when React was introduced, it didn't have support for TypeScript. But now these days, even React developers or Vue.js developers are moving to support TypeScript in their code. And people in last 2 to 3 years, what I have seen is majority of the projects are built on TypeScript only. Okay, so we'll cover things in detail, how this TypeScript is compiled and everything once we get ahead of the code. Okay, so now uh, with when we work with any application, we have to design it based on some kind of a design pattern. So a very common design pattern which is used is MVC, where we have model, view, controller. Model is a representation of data. So what data we have, how to get the data, like if you want to make an API request, how will you get the data from the API and load into the application. Your view is something which the user will see, your end customer will see that on the screen. That's the view. And you have a controller, which is the way of interacting between the model and the view. So this is used with most of the traditional applications. If you are creating a Java or a .NET application, you must have heard of MVC in it. So Angular, because it's not a backend application or a backend setup, it uses a different type of a design pattern, which is called as MVVM. So it has view and model, and instead of a controller, it has a object which is called as a view model. So view model is a place where all the interactions between the model and the view are controlled. So this is just a property which will be implemented in the Angular components, which will allow you to send data from your view to the model, and model will send the data to your view. So I will show you how this is done, but for us that we need to learn that, okay, Angular does not support MVC, it supports a pattern which is called as MVVM. Okay, now next is installing Angular and setting up the project for it. So for installing Angular on our systems and work with Angular, we need an application or a tool which is called as Node.js. So I hope you have Node.js on your system. If you don't, it's not a problem. You can install Node.js on your system by using this link. And please install the version 16.15, the LTS version from here on your system. So you can download for Mac, Windows, Linux, any environment you're working with, you can use this on your system. Okay, so if you don't have Node.js on your system, we can wait. Let's wait for 10 minutes and you install Node.js on your system, and then we'll continue. If you have Node.js, just send me a yes that I have, and after 10 minutes, we'll continue. Hi everyone. Okay, so I hope everybody has installed Node.js on your system. If you have Node.js already on your system, it's fine. Yeah, so great. So if you're Windows, okay, so I got a message. So Windows 7 doesn't support latest, or doesn't support Node 18, Node 16. So try to be on at least Node.js version 12, but anything less than 12 will not work properly. Okay, so that's good. So minimum is Node.js version 12. If you have 12, anything like 12 dot something something, that is fine. Okay, great. So if you need to check which version of Node.js you are on, so on your Windows system, you can use command prompt, or on your Mac system, you can use terminal. So here, this is the command you have to run to check the version of your Node.js on your system. So in your command prompt, type in this command, and that will print you the version of Node.js on your system. Any version which is more than 12 dot something and something will be fine. All right, so Node.js is installed. Now the next step would be to create a new project. So this would need us to use the command prompt. We need to run a command to create a new project. And luckily with Angular, this is a very good thing with Angular, that it has a CLI or a command line interface to create an Angular project. So we go to this link, which is Angular CLI. Okay, over here, it has the steps for creating the Angular project. So very simple. We have to run this command, this one, which I'm going to send you in the chat. You run this command to install the Angular CLI on your system. So I'll say npm install -g Angular-CLI. Okay, so this will download the latest CLI using npm and make it available on your system. Okay, so once done, run the command ng and see if it works or not. Okay, so if you run the ng command, I can give you a different one like this. Yeah. So what you do is, once the Angular CLI is installed, run the ng command. You will get an error like this, that it's not able to find any relevant commands for it, but the ng command will work. You may not get this warning because it's on my system only that I have node 16 or sorry 17, and that gives the error on this. So don't worry about this warning. Just see if you get this kind of error that you need to specify a different command before moving ahead. So just ng. Once the Angular CLI is installed, then you have to run ng. Okay, I will repeat the steps again. So first thing would be, you need to install Angular CLI with this command, which I sent you. Okay. Once this is done, then you have to run the command Angular or ng, and that will give you a warning like this, that you need to specify a command before running the ng command over here. Okay. If you get this, then your Angular setup has been done. Yep, great. That's fine. If you get this same error, it's perfect. We have our Angular CLI running. So now we have to create a new project. So we are working on the command prompt or terminal. So what you have to do is, you have to open a folder where you want to create the project. So I like to create all of my project on the desktop. So what I will do is, I'm in the user folder. I will say go to desktop, and now I'm on the desktop of my system. Okay, so you can also navigate to some location where you want to store your project. So this will create the project files at that location. So just navigate to any specific location. I prefer to use desktop. Okay, so Sheikh, yeah, the error which you're getting, that means you don't have Node.js installed on your system. Okay, so Sheikh, can you do a screen share? Is it fine? Okay, I will send you a request. 1 second. Okay, so I'm making you the presenter. So we will, okay, just make sure you don't have any personal data or anything shown up on the screen. Great. Okay, so you're getting this error. Okay, so run the command node-v. Check. I can see a screen. Can you run the command node-v? Yeah, over here you can run this. Okay, so yeah, so your system, it's not recognizing the node command. But yeah, this is a good thing you did. So what you can do is you can close these terminals, sorry, these command prompts, close both of them. Okay, so in your start menu, so this is a problem which every Windows user may face. So go to your start menu and search for Node.js command prompt. So you have to write the whole string Node.js command prompt space command prompt. No, don't search that. Go back. Just write Node.js space command prompt. See, now it shows a match over here. The first application, which is the best match. Click on that. Yeah. So it's the same term command prompt, but it supports the Node.js commands directly in it. So this may be a problem with every Windows user that the Node.js commands may not work for you directly on the terminal. So what you have to do is on the command prompt. So what you have to do is in the start menu, search for Node.js command prompt. It will show you two options. You have to pick the option which says complete Node.js command prompt. Okay, so now on this system, you can see it runs the command prompt and you can run all the ng commands over here. So open this command prompt for Windows users if you are facing problems with running the ng command. Okay, great. So I will move, take back the control. Okay, so who is not able to set this up? Let me go through this. Somnath is saying couldn't be able to navigate to desktop. So you have to if you're on a Windows machine, then you can just write cd desktop. I think that should work from your user folder. Yeah, the npm command is actually slow, so that's it takes some time. So Krishna, can you do a screen share? Amya, I will just send you a request. Amya, can you do a screen share? Yeah, okay. Amya, I will send you a request. Okay, you're the presenter now. Make sure you don't have any personal content on the screen. Okay, so see, you're not in the Node.js command prompt. You are using the Node.js editor. So close this window. Now go to your start menu. No, don't open this. Go to start menu. Yeah, search for Node.js command prompt. Node.js command prompt. Yeah, this one. Sorry, there is a typo. So this one. So open this. Okay, over here you can do the ng command. So run ng and it should work. Okay, it's not recognized. So that means the Angular CLI is not installed. So you can run the same command again, which I sent you. That is again, I'm sending it again. There is a space between the G and that, right? Okay, so this command does take a lot of time to install, so wait for it. It actually depends on how good your network is. So if it is quite good, so it will probably take a minute. It can take up to 5 minutes or something. Okay, let's wait for it to install. Okay, so Mandeep, in this case, if you okay, so it maybe they updated the latest requirement. So you have to install the latest version of Node.js or upgrade version of it. So yeah, please update the Node.js version on your system then. Okay, so yeah, Senthil, that's a normal command. So that normal warning you get. So if your npm is older, then it gets a update warning that you should update. You can update that later on, but don't do it right now. Okay, so Amya, I think it will install, and then you can run the Angular ng command and see if it works or not. Let it install. It takes time, so don't rush into it. Right. So I got a question. Does Angular work as a mobile-friendly web application? Yeah, it works as a mobile-friendly application too. So that won't be a problem. So if you are using, the only thing is like you have to pick a right design system. Like if you're using Bootstrap, you can easily use it for mobile applications too. Yeah, so Ramanaresh, your code is ready. So you can, that's fine. So if you're getting that warning, that's fine. Yes, until that is also good. Your code is ready. You can create the project over here now. So I will give you the command for creating the project now. So the next step is you have to run the command ng new and the name of the project we are building. So I will call it as Edureka News. And then you have to write a flag, which is prefix, or a parameter you have to pass, which is prefix. And we're going to call this parameter as Edureka, or yeah, Edureka like this. Okay, so this is the command you have to run to create your new project. Send it to all. Okay, so once you run this command, okay, so once you run this command, it will give you a few options. That first one would be, do you want to enable auto completion? No, we'll say no, will not enable auto completion. Would you like to share anonymous usage data? No, I don't want to share anonymous usage data. So we'll say N. Press N over here. That will be no. Would you like to that's the privacy policy. Say no. Okay. So now once you come to this point where it asks you to add Angular routing, over here you have to say yes. Angular routing is going to be yes. Then it asks you for CSS styles, which CSS style you want to use. You can use simple CSS. So the two options which you have to select is like there are actually three options which you have to select. So autocomplete will set to no. The privacy, oh sorry, the data sharing will set to no. Just press N on it and press enter. For routing, you have to press yes, Y, and enter. And CSS, you have to pick CSS as option. Yes, we need to add Angular routing. So press Y and press enter after that. I will cover the prefix command again. I haven't covered any details about it, so I'll show you what is the prefix command. But first create the project, then I will walk you through what are the features we implemented. Okay, so I got a question why there are three types of CSS. So I'm picking CSS because it's the simple, everybody would be comfortable with writing CSS code. There are options like some teams prefer to write SCSS, which is Sass. There is less, which can be for this. These are again compilers for CSS. They have additional features like variables and all in the CSS code. So we are just picking out an option which is familiar with everyone. Okay, so if you have entered no for Angular routing, don't worry about it. We'll set up the routing later on. It's not required for day one right now. Okay, so next thing is with CSS, you have to select CSS, not SCSS, only the simple CSS. And this privacy policy from Google will just say no. Yeah, CSS will be again selected. You need to follow the same steps every time we create a project. Yes, you have to follow the same steps whenever you're creating a new project. It just depends on the only thing which will be variable is the CSS type. If you are comfortable with SCSS, less, then use that. Otherwise, all of the same steps have to be followed. Yeah, at the end, you will get a warning that it will say Git is not recognized as an internal command. Yeah, because when you create a new project, what Angular CLI does is it tries to create a Git setup also. Some systems may not have Git on them, so it's fine if you get that warning. We can completely ignore that. No problem with that. So in my case, see, when my project was created, it ran the Git command and created this Git setup for me. But your system may not have Git on it, so it's fine if it doesn't work. No problem with it. Okay, so at this point, the project would be created, and now you have to navigate to this project. So see, my project was created on desktop. So on my desktop, if you check, there will be a new folder which is created, which is Edureka News. On your Mac machine, you can run cd ls command. So Mac systems will use ls, and Windows can use dir command to list which folders you have. So we'll see this folder created over here, which is Edureka News. So this is our project folder. So everything which we have in our project is in this Edureka News project folder over here. So I have to navigate inside this folder. So I will run the command cd Edureka News. So over here, once you run this command cd Edureka News, you will be in the project folder, and now you can start this project or start making changes into this project. So first step for us would be yes, Senthil. So for Angular routing, you have to set yes. For CSS, you can pick CSS, and it will take some time to install the packages. So don't worry about it. So it takes a few minutes. So you have to run the command only like ls only. So you send me a message like sudo ls, the ls command will be run directly. So don't write sudo in front of it. Okay, so once the installation is done, your project is ready. Then navigate to the project folder by running the cd folder name. So I've sent you the command for it. You can see the example over here also. I've written cd angular, oh sorry, Edureka news, and I'm in the project folder. Now, once you're in the project folder, your next step would be to open that project in Visual Studio Code. So do you have Visual Studio Code on your system? Not Visual Studio, you have to install Visual Studio Code. So this is the application for it, the link. If you don't have Visual Studio Code on your system, then please install it from here. So this is the editor we are going to use for developing our Angular application. So it has plugins in it, which will be required like to help us, not actually required, but those will help us in getting a better experience in development. So use Visual Studio Code for your development. Okay. So what I will do is I will give you 5 minutes. I will wait for 5 minutes. For anyone who has not installed Visual Studio Code on the system, please install it from this link. It is free and it can be installed on Mac, Windows, or Linux, but you have to see which operating system does it support. Like if you have a older operating system, it may not support over here. So yeah, so Windows 7 users cannot use it. Windows 8, 10, 11 can only use it. Mac, most of the new operating systems do support this. Okay, so I will wait for 5 minutes and then continue. I will set up the timer over here. I will send you the link first. This is the location you have to download it, and start the timer for 5 minutes. And then we'll meet after 5 minutes. If you have any questions, send me the questions. I'm here. And now we can continue. So I will also open Visual Studio Code on my system. So search for VS Code. And I need to open this project in VS Code. So in the VS Code, in the file menu, you will get an option for open folder. Okay, so open that. And you will go to the place where you have kept your folder. So in my case, I've kept the project folder on desktop. So I have this Edureka news folder. We'll go into it and open this project. Okay, so this is the whole project which is created by the Angular CLI for us. Okay, so over here you will find different files, and we'll go through these some of the files and understand what they actually are for. So first of all, this Visual Studio Code folder, it is just for providing you information about how to run this project in Visual Studio Code. These are specific launch commands and task commands over here to launch this in development mode or run test cases over here. Okay, so we don't generally use this much, but yeah, it has the basic setup for setting up Visual Studio Code. Then you have node modules. So this complete project is implemented using Node.js. So it's not that you need a Node.js server to run this project on production. You can integrate this project with Java, .NET, anything. It's just when you're developing this project, you need Node.js, and Node.js has lots of dependencies for this project, and all those dependencies are here. One simple rule: do not change anything in the node modules. So don't go to any of these folders and say, okay, I want to change any of these files, because if you change anything over here, it will be locally changed on your system and will not be shared with your teammates. In that case, anything which works on your system may not work on their systems. In that case, that would be a big problem. So do not change anything in the node modules folder. The SRC folder is the place where we will be making all the changes for our code. I will cover this later. The next file is your browser list RC file. So browser list RC file has the list of all the browsers which are going to be supported by this Angular setup. So it's going to support the last version of Chrome, the last version of Firefox, Safari, Edge, iOS, and Firefox ESR. So over here, this will be picked by your compilation. So when your code gets compiled, it will check that what versions are you looking for. So over here, we're just saying the last version is good enough in this case. So if you want to support any more versions for specific, like if you go to Chrome, and Chrome has information about which version is it. It's 103. So, but I want to support another older version also. So in that case, I can define that, okay, instead of 103, like or 102, pick the last 10 version of it. So it will support until 93 in that case, but we generally don't need it. So this is the browser list config. Then you have the editor config. This is just to configure your editor. This is a standard configuration which multiple editors support. To say what kind of indent we are going to use. Are we going to use spaces or tabs? And what is the size of the indent? We are going to use spacing, trail spacing, maximum line length. All these things are defined over here. And then you have the git ignore file. So if you're using Git, a Git project, so on a Git project, you have to configure that what files have to be committed into GitHub and what files not have to be committed. So all of them are defined over here. So like in the Visual Studio Code folder, I want to commit everything except these changes. Or when we are creating a build, so we don't want to commit these changes into it, like the dist folder, temp folder are not required to be committed into Git. Then you have the Angular JS JSON file. So this is the structure of how the project is set up. Okay, so this CLI allows you to define one single project or multiple projects in the same folder. So the recommended approach is you create one folder for your project and add one project in it. So we have one folder which is called as Edureka News, and all the related things to that is in this file. So what do we have? So it has a list of projects in it. We can create multiple projects in the same folder. It is only required when you are creating a mono repo, when you are setting up multiple projects in your company, and all of them have to be maintained under one repository with the concept of mono repos. Then only you need to add multiple projects in it. Otherwise, I would prefer not to create multiple projects in the same Angular folder. Okay, so it defines that what type of project it is. It's an application. What is the root source root over here? Like where is the source code going to come from? That is the SRC folder. Now you guys asked me that what is the prefix? So prefix is defined over here, and this will be used for naming our components. So we learned about in the drawing that I showed you that in Angular we need to create components. This prefix is used for creating those component names. I will show you that in once we go to the SRC folder that will be defined over here. So if you have not selected a prefix, you can update the prefix in this file, but any components which are already created before updating the prefix will still use the older name or the older prefix, and then you have to manually update those components with the new prefix name. Okay. Then we have basic setup for files, like where will the compiled code will go. That will be the output file, output path over here. What is the starting HTML? So in our drawing, I showed you that Angular has one single HTML file, or a single which application has one single HTML file. So this is the location for it. So that file is located in the SRC folder HTML over here. So you can see it has no major HTML content in it. It just defines that, okay, this is the Angular project. That's it. Okay, so that's defined over here. All the static images, like any images you want, you will put them in the static folder, in the assets static folder over here. Style sheets, if you're using custom styles, like if you want to add support for Bootstrap or any other design system, you can add the styles for them over here. This is the compilation configuration that once you create a production ready build, it will give you warnings. These are just warnings that how big is your project. So if it is reaching 500 kilobytes or some specific size, it will give you a warning that this particular file is quite big and try to refactor that into a smaller code. Okay. There is environment settings also. So because we going to work with multiple environments like QA, production, development environments, they have their own independent configuration, which we define in this environment files. And further information is about how the project is going to be compiled, which compiler we are using, and the code for running the test cases. So it supports Karma test cases. Karma is a test runner, so it has the configuration of how the Karma configuration will be picked up. It's from the karma conf.file, which is over here, and it has the information about how the test cases are going to be executed. So that's over here. Okay, I will show you. I got another question about the prefix. Give me a minute. Prefix is not anything very important. It's just one name. So I'll just cover that. So because I've been getting this question that what is prefix, I will show you that what is a prefix. Give me a minute. Okay, so package log file over here is auto-generated file. Do not change anything in this file. Package JSON file is a file which has the Node.js dependencies mentioned. So whatever dependencies this project will have, like this project has dependencies on these modules, they're all defined over here. It also has dependency on RxJS, TSLib, and zone.js. These are separate libraries, so they are also defined over here. And development dependencies, which are for running Karma test cases or building this code using the dev kit, is also defined over here. Then you have the README file. It has the basic instructions on how to start the project. The last three files are the TS configuration. So you're going to write TypeScript code. Now, how is this TypeScript code going to be compiled into JavaScript? So that's all defined over here. So the output code, like where will this code be compiled to? What is the location for it? What is the target of it? Like the TypeScript code has to be compatible with ES 2020, 22, whatever target you want to support. That is defined over here, and few other settings like the TypeScript code uses a feature called as decorators. So that has been enabled over here. Sorry, Angular code actually uses this feature which is called as decorator. This is not natively available in JavaScript. If you write a decorator code in JavaScript, it will fail. But adding support using TypeScript is like done like this. You can say what options are to be enabled. You can use that. Now this is your base config, and this base config is getting extended in two different configs. So base config extends into app. So app is for your application when it starts, and the TS config spec is for your test cases. When your test cases are running, what configuration you want to run. So over here, the main difference is in the app, you're only picking the files which are coming from the source folder, the main files, but in the spec, you're also including the test case files in it. So these are the test case files which are called as spec. So we are picking the main files plus the test case files to run the test cases for your Angular components or anything which you build with Angular. Okay, so I got a question. What is the difference between Angular.json and package.json? So package.json is a Node.js specific file. It has the dependencies listed for Node.js. That when you install this project, when you give this project to your teammates, or whenever, if I'm giving you this project, how will you install the dependencies? So those are defined all over here. So what you need to do is in Node.js, there is a command called as node or npm install. Npm install will go through all these dependencies and install them locally on a system in this project folder. Angular.json is a definition of how the project setup is done. It has nothing related to Node.js. It is only specific to what project you have and how it has been structured. So that's defined in the Angular.json file. So it has basic configurations like what is the output file, what is the index files which are used, what is the prefix which you're using, which is quite popular right now, that what is the prefix. So yeah, so prefix is over here, which is defined. Now, this is the basic root folder. Then in the SRC folder, we have the complete code for our application. So anything which is related to the application will be in the SRC folder. So in our drawing, I told you that there are concept of component which you have to create. So these components are here. So our application is going to start with our first component that is called as the app. or the app module in this case. So your Angular application is actually divided into smaller parts. So I will show you. So Angular application, when you create an application, you will have one big application. It has smaller chunks in it. So there are going to be modules. So first is your app module, which you are going to create over here. So it is going to be already created for you. That is this one, the app module, and everything related to your application initially will go to the app module. If you need to create multiple modules in it, you can nest modules inside the app module. So what you can do is you can say my application has a module for user flow, so I will create a user module in it. My application has a module for news, so I'll create a news module in it. But all of them will be inside the app module. Now, the Angular application can also depend on external modules. So they are not implemented by you, but they are implemented by somebody else or the Angular core team. So these are third-party modules which you can install also in your Angular application. So we'll say these are third-party. And they are also going to be connected with your application. Okay, so you can see over here, this is the module folder, the app module folder. This will be always created by for your project right now. Okay, so in this, you will have the routing file. If you have picked the option for enable Angular routing, so the routing file will be created and the routing module will be created for you. If you haven't, if you just said no over there, this file will not be present, but we will create this file later on and configure it once we need it. Right now, we don't need this file. Next is a component CSS. So when you create an Angular application, you have the module. Now these modules are connected with your app module, and the app module will have a tree of components inside it. How does it looks like? So it will have different components which are required in it. So let's say I have an app component in it. The app component will have another nested component in it. That will be the header component. Okay, then that header component can have another nested component in it, which is the navigation component in it. So it can have multiple levels of components nested into each other. These are independent components. These are going to be the building blocks which will provide you template and all the feature which you need to run the particular use case. So every component has a CSS file with it, a HTML file. This HTML is your template. This will be used for showing the content related for this template. Okay, so you have the spec file. This file is going to be having the test cases. These are automation test cases. This is our, I think, the second last module in which we are going to pick this, that what is our automation test case and how do we run them. So we'll cover them later, but every module will create a spec file with it. A component will create a spec file with it. Then the last is over here is your related to the component. This is related to the component. This is your component.ts file. And the prefix which we have been discussing about, that what is the prefix, where it has been used, the prefix is used over here. So when a component is created, the selector for that component is going to have the prefix in front of it. So any new component which you're going to create, it will have the component name and a prefix of the application which you have. So let's say I'm going to create a navigation component or header component. The selector for that component would be like this. So it will say, it will be Edureka header. So that will be the selector for it. So the prefix is used for creating the selector. If you don't provide a prefix, the application will automatically pick a prefix that is app, and then later on you can change it if it is required. So but I would recommend always create a prefix for your application so that it's unique, and you can share components between other teams also. But if you use the app prefix, then it limits you with sharing the components or the services which you're going to create with other team members in some way. So always assign a prefix to your application first. One thing important, if you have the presenter right, do not start the screen sharing or accidentally start your camera also. It can be a problem in some cases. So be careful with that. Okay, so that's here 4 files which are related to a component. So these are auto-generated. You don't have to worry about creating these files. Even if you create a new component, it will be created for you by the CLI. I will show you the commands for it, but yeah, these are auto-generated. Okay, so the important thing over here is the code which we have for the component. So let's understand this code. So component has a component decorator. So what is a decorator? Anything which starts with @ in this project is a decorator. So here @ component means it's a decorator which we're implementing. So decorators are used for extending a class. So instead of writing a code for export this particular class and extend that with a new component class, the decorator is for adding additional features to this class by using the syntax. Okay, so this syntax is not supported directly with JavaScript. It is added using the support of TypeScript. So anything which you're building in Angular will probably have some kind of a decorator attached to that. So if you're creating a component, it has a component decorator. If you're creating a service, it will have a service decorator with it. So we'll see multiple decorators which are used in our Angular app. Now, what is the relevant of this selector? So what is the use of it? The selector over here means the HTML element which will be used for adding this component on the screen. Okay, so the element name right now is called as Edureka root. And where is this element used right now? So this element is used in our index.html. So if you go to index.html, you will find there is an element written over here, which is Edureka root. So when the Angular code starts, when this page gets loaded and the Angular code starts, it's going to look for the app component. It's going to see that where is this app component and what selector is defined in it. So the selector which is defined over here is Edureka root. So it will go to the index.html and replace the Edureka root element with the Angular application in it. Okay, so let me show you how this runs. So what you can do is you can go to your command prompt and run a command ng serve, or you can run the command npm start. So there are two commands, both of them will do the same thing. You can run ng serve or npm start. Okay, so this will start the compilation. This will start the development server, compile the Angular code, and run that code on this location, which is localhost 4200. So now I'll go to my browser and say localhost 4200. And that will load your Angular application. Okay, so this starts your project and you see this kind of a template. This template is loaded from the app component. So you can go to the app component. It has this component template file and it has a text over here also that you should actually delete this and start building your own project from here. So I can safely delete everything from this file and write hello world. Save this file and you will see hello world on your page. So this means your Angular project is running and it's able to compile our template and working fine. Now, how does the Angular application actually starts when we say ng serve? So how it starts is the ng command actually looks for a file which is called as main.ts in your project. This main.ts file is your entry point. The Angular project starts from here. Over here, we tell that what kind of a project it is by defining the platform. So it's a browser-based platform. It is designed for running on a browser. There is a platform for running on server side. If you want to implement a server side application with it, we can use a server side platform, but this is only designed to run on your browser. Now, when you define the platform and you initialize your application, that is done over here in this line, browser platform dynamic and bootstrap module. So you have to provide the starting module. Bootstrap module means the starting module which will start your Angular application. So by default, every application has an app module in it. So it is defined over here, which is loaded from the module file, the app module file, which is defined over here. So once the app module is loaded, it has defined, so see over here, the module is defined over here by using the ng module decorator. It's been created. Once the module is loaded on the page, it will look for the bootstrap component. So it will start the code from this bootstrap line. So here we define the first component which we want to start the Angular application from. So you can define the bootstrap component, and this component will be loaded on the screen for the first time when the user enters the page. Now, all the other components which we need on the page will be nested under this app component. Okay, so we don't have to bootstrap them, we just have to directly use them, and the Angular code will automatically set them up for us. Okay, so how it works is, first the index.html gets loaded. The index.html loads the main.ts. The main.ts tells us to load the app module. The app module gets loaded and gets started. The app module says that load the app component over here in the bootstrap, and the app component gets loaded. When the app component gets loaded, it looks for this selector on the page. Wherever it finds the selector, it will load the Angular application inside that selector, and that selector is your root element which is created over here. Okay, so once you make changes into it, you will see the screens updated. So now let's go to the browser and do an inspect on it. So if you click on inspect, you will see the template structure of how the page is loaded over here. So you can see I have the add Edureka root component. It shows me that this is an Angular host, and it is running the Angular version, which is 14.0.3. That is the latest version of Angular which we are running. And all the content which is coming from any component inside it will be loaded inside this root component. So everything related to the Angular code will be here. And also you will find some some JavaScript files over here. We haven't mentioned these files in the index.html, but they are still added over here. These are added by the development server. So when this code gets compiled, it picks the index.html and automatically adds the references to these files in the code. Over here, you'll find the same main.js file. So if I open this file in the sources panel, so this is the compiled code which you have for the TypeScript code gets compiled into JavaScript over here, and you can see it has the routing module, it has the app component, which is having the text as Edureka news in it. The app module also loaded over here. So everything which is in the main.ts and the complete hierarchy of bootstrapping the project will be loaded over here. So you can see the app module. This is a compiled code, so we don't have to worry about how this looks. Most of the time, we don't have to even touch this kind of a code and make changes into it. We can write some debugging scripts directly in the editor and see how this code can be debugged. Okay. So how this works is, let me draw you a diagram for this where we have. So when your Angular application starts, so first your browser sends a request to the server. The server returns the index.html. So over here, the server says, okay, it loads the index.html. Index.html then loads the main.js. The main.js will have the code for all the modules and everything defined in it. So it will load the first module, which is the Bootstrap module. Okay, and that is called as the app module that gets loaded. Okay, once the Bootstrap module is loaded, it looks for the Bootstrap component, the component which has to start the application. That gets loaded, and that is also called as app. And then that component will update the root element in defined in index.html file. So it will update the index root element in the index.html file and add all the Angular application code inside it. So then the Angular application starts like this. So this is the steps. So first your index.html loads. It loads the main.js. Main.js loads the app module. App module loads the Bootstrap component, and the Bootstrap component loads the complete application into the root module. Okay, so that's the same thing happening over here. So when we start this request, first it loads the index.html that gets loaded. Then it loads the main.js. The main.js then loads the further internal methods for app module and component in it. All the other files over here are auto-generated. This one is for vendor. It will have the Angular code base, like the complete Angular code base in it. The polyfills is a file which will have the any code which is not supported directly with your browser. It's kind of a polyfill or a workaround to implement something in the code. And the runtime is the code for running the Angular project in your browser. Okay, and it also has some code for implementing some development specific features in the runtime file. So we when we deploy this, some of these files may also change. Okay, so I got a question: is Angular slower than React.js? No, I don't believe that. Angular and React.js are very similar in performance. It's mainly that how you are implementing the code. So if you are implementing if you're following the very bad practices in Angular, it will be slower than that of React. Even if you're implementing bad practices in React, it will be slower. So neck to neck, I think both of them are very similar. I have made same applications in both the frameworks. It's kind of the same scenario. So never heard of it. Okay, so I got a very good question, and yeah, so it's a very important question. That the question is, I've heard that Angular is not SEO friendly. Is it true? Yes, Angular is not friendly with SEO, and you can easily see the reason for it. So when I do a page source, there is nothing in this application over here. So when you do a SEO or search engine optimization, your search engine will actually process your HTML and pick content from here. But in this index.html, there is nothing over here. It has only this root element, which makes no sense. So any application which is built on Angular, React.js, Vue.js, or any single page application framework or library will not be compatible with search engine optimization. Okay, they will be only good in SEO if they have a server-side rendering available in it. Otherwise, they will not be able to. They will not be friendly with the search engine optimization. There are lots of workarounds you have to do, but by default, they are not friendly. And those workarounds are not always sure that they will improve your search engine optimization ratings. So a follow-up question to that is, Node.js provides SEO. See, Node.js is a server. It's not a solution to provide a specific requirements. Like we cannot say that a Node.js application is also going to provide you SEO support. So Node.js is a server similar to how PHP or how .NET is. If you are building a Node.js application, maybe it's only for implementing APIs. You're not creating server-side pages with it. So anything which creates HTML compiled on the Node.js side, then only it is server-side compatible. Okay, so I got a question. Why scripts is having so many hyperlinks like? Okay, so there are multiple script tags over here. So there are multiple script files which are getting compiled. So that's why there are multiple script tags over here. So when the code gets compiled, based on what kind of feature or what kind of specific requirement it is, it creates multiple files. So we'll see other files like there will be more other files which will be created, but yeah. Okay, so can we use types to use TypeScript? Do I have to use Angular? No, Angular can be used with React.js. Sorry, why I'm saying like this. TypeScript can be used with React.js, Node.js, Vue.js, or even plain old JavaScript projects can be implemented with TypeScript. So you don't have a dependency of TypeScript and Angular only. Okay, coming back to the code setup. So this is the index, this is the template file. So whatever changes you make will be updating on the UI. So if I write something like this, some junk characters over here, save this, and it will immediately update them on the UI. So sometimes it takes time, but yeah. So ideally it should update them whenever I am saving the file. So see, it automatically refreshes the page for me and updates the content for me over here. So I'm not refreshing it, it just starts the refresh process when I save the file. Okay, so we can write hello world over here. Now, few commands which I will show you today is how to create a new component. So what you have to do is keep the server running. So the command prompt window which you have running, keep it running and open a new command prompt. So for me, I will open a new window. Okay, so this window should be also in the same project folder. So I'm in the Edureka news folder. Okay, so over here, no, so you have to create a new command. So if you stop, okay, I got a question. When ng serve is running, I cannot run any new command? Yeah, you cannot run any new command in the terminal. So you have to create a new terminal window or a command prompt window and run commands in it. If you want to stop the server, then press Control C. That will stop the server. But when you're developing the application, you should always keep the ng serve command running so that the code gets compiled immediately when you are making changes into it. Okay, so to run a new command, I have created a new command prompt window. I'm keeping the server running on a different side. This is a new command prompt window. Over here, I'm going to run a command ng generate component. In the components folder, I want to create a header component. Okay, so this is the command to create a new component for us. Okay, so I got a question. How does it does the automatic refresh? So the automatic refresh is done using WebSockets. It's only available on development mode. It's not going to be available when you deployed this application. So what it does is with the command line interface, it creates a WebSocket connection. And when you save a file, it tells the browser to refresh it. So it's this connection automatically tells the browser to run a JavaScript code to refresh the browser window. So that's how it updates it. So every time when you're saving the file, it will keep on sending these messages to the server or to the client. See these live reload messages, they will automatically force the browser to refresh when you're changing any files. Okay, so once you run the command which I've given you, you will find a components folder getting created over here. So run this command. It creates the folders for you. It creates a components folder, in that creates a header folder and the 4 files required for a component. And you will find them in the components folder, header, and the files over here. Okay, so now if you go to the component TS file, the header component.ts file, you'll find a selector over here, which is Edureka header. So that's the selector or the name of the element which I have to use to add this header component in my application. And this will be added as a nested component. So what you do is, so your components will be structured like this. Your app component is your parent, parent of the whole application. Then you have further components nested in it. So how do we add that? So the selector of that component is Edureka header, and I will go to the app component.html and add this over here like this and save it. And that defines that my app component has a child component which is called as the header component over here, and that adds this on the screen. So now when I go to the browser, I will see it shows me a message which says header works. And where is this message coming from? It comes from the header components template file. So if you go to the template file of the header component, you will find this over here, this text over here. Okay, so try this out. So create the component using the command which I sent you. Update the app component with the Edureka header component in it, and see does it prints header works like this. Let me know if it works or not. Name, and the component which I want to build is the header component. So it creates a components folder. All the components which I need in my application will be inside the components folder, and a separate folder for each component will be created. Okay, for the header component, this is the command which you have to run. I've already sent you in the chat. Please check this. And once you run that command, it will create a components folder. It will have a header folder in it, and the 4 files related to the fold component. And you have to add that component selector in the app component.html file. So this will create a hierarchy of components. So the app component has a child component which is called as the Edureka header component. In the TS file, there is no change. There is no change in any of the TS files. The only change is in the HTML file. That's it. I've sent you the command in the chat, but if you want to see, this is the command which I've run. And this is how the files are going to be created. 4 files, and the app module also gets updated. I'll show you why this gets updated. Yeah. Anyone having troubles with running this code? Yes, so everything which you are building in your application, so I got a question, for all sections will be created in a component. Yes, so any feature or anything which you're building in your application will be created as a component and will add the specific features. And so I created a mock design. So like over here, we are going to create a design like this. So we are going to create a navigation header, sorry, a header for the application, then navigation header which will have the links to navigate from different pages, then some articles, and some articles related to some different things in the system, and a footer. So all of these things are going to be created as separate components. So this will be, like in our case, let's say this is going to be our first component, this is going to be our second component, this whole container is our yellow one, this is our app component which is wrapping everything, Then this article is also going to be a component. Let's pick some other colors. These all four boxes are going to be one single component repeated 4 times. So we'll just color like this. And the footer is also going to be a component like this. So we have to create components for everything and assemble them on our web page. Okay, so now coming to what was the update happening to this module TS file. So one important thing is when you are creating any component, directive, and service, there are three things which needs to be updated in the module TS file. So we have only covered components till now. So any component which you're creating, that has to be imported in the module TS file and also be added in the declaration section. So there are 4 things actually. You have components, directives, and pipe, and services. So services are not required to be updated in module component or module, but these 3 have to be updated in the declaration section. So over here we'll say required in declarations. So whenever you're creating any component, you have to update that in the declarations section. So because we create the component using the Angular CLI, so it automatically knows this rule and updates the declaration for us. Otherwise, if we are just creating the 4 files by ourselves, like creating new files and writing the code, then you have to manually add this over here and update this file. So that's the change which is done. So it's only this change. The header component is imported and that is added in the declaration section. That's it. Why this is done? So that the Angular project knows that there is a component which we have to support. See, what I will do is I will comment this line for header component to be declared in it and go to the browser and run this code. Okay, so let's wait for it to refresh. 1 second. So it's not refreshing. Why? Because if I see, there is an error over here. So over here it says that I am using a element. It's called as Edureka header. So this header element is ideally a custom HTML element or it's a component. So it doesn't know that are you creating a custom using a custom HTML element or as a web component, or are you using a Angular component? So it's not clear with that. So it gives an error that fix this problem. So either you have to enable custom element schema, or you have to tell us that is it actually a component or not. So that's why in the declaration section, we have to add that this is a header component which I want to use. And now once I change this, the code gets compiled and works properly fine over here. So whenever your page doesn't refreshes or you get some changes not being updated on the screen, just check your terminal. Probably there is some error and you have to fix that error then. Okay, so any questions now? Yes, Kumar, what's the question? If you have any questions, please send me your questions in the chat box. Okay, so I'm still trying to figure out how the component got added. So the component got added by running this command. So see, I am running this command. This command automatically creates the files for me and adds the component into my project folder. Okay. Now, when you are having multiple components and you want to create nesting of them, so these components are HTML elements which are getting created. So we can treat them as HTML elements. And in HTML, if you want to create a hierarchy, you have to just add components or HTML elements nested to each other. So what I want to do is I want to add the header component as a child of the app component. So I will go to the app component and define that I have a header component in my application, and I want that component to be the child of the app component, and define that and save this file. That's it. And now Angular code will automatically see that what is this header component, what is this tag over here. If it is a valid component in the Angular project, it will create it as a Angular component and process that on the screen. So it now, if I show you the HTML layout, so you'll see the HTML layout has Edureka root and the Edureka header component over here, which is nested, which has a p tag which says header works. Somnath, are you getting any errors in the editor? Oh, sorry, in the terminal? And one important thing, did you save the files and the code is compiling? Did you leave the code compilation running? So you have to keep the server running. If you stop the server, it will not work. So what is the error you're getting? Can you do a screen share, Somnath? Okay, I will send you the request. Okay, so what is the error? Can you go to the code, go to app component HTML? Okay, so is the command running? Where is the ng-serve command running? Okay, do one thing, stop this and restart again. Control C. Okay, and restart again. Now it's updated. So sometimes it happens that the compiler gets stuck. So now if you go back to the browser, you can see it shows header works.
Yes.
It's kind of a common problem. So sometimes the compiler gets stuck.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so who's next? Okay, so got a next question. Can we add multiple HTML elements in the same component? Yep, you can. So let me show you. Somnath, can you please mute yourself? Okay, so let's say I have another component to be created. So I will create a footer component. Okay, footer component is created. And now the footer component is over here. It has a selector, which is Edureka footer. So we'll copy this and add into my Edureka footer component like this. So now the app component has two child components in it, the header and the footer component. So this hierarchy can extend to n number of elements. So the footer component can have another component inside it. So there is no limit that you can only have like 5 or 6 components nested. You can have n number of components nested into each other. Okay, so I got a question. I think spec is for testing purposes, so I can delete the spec file. No, so do not delete the spec files. In the later sessions, we are going to use these spec files to write test cases for these components. So do not delete them. Okay. Senthil, you want to do a screen share? So I got a question from Shrisha. What could be the possible reason for the below error? Could not find implementation for builder Angular. So maybe your node modules are not there's a error in the node modules. Retry the ng-serve command again, and I think that will fix the problem. Okay, Senthil, if you want to do a screen share, I can send you the request. Here you go. Yes, Senthil. So what's happening? What happens, Senthil? Senthil, are you there?
Yeah, Praveen, I'm here.
Yeah.
I have opened the folder Edureka News, but I didn't get any drop down.
So close the Visual Studio Code and reopen it again. It's an issue with Visual Studio Code. Sometimes it doesn't run the files. Please open Visual Studio Code again. Don't close the terminal because then you have to start the project also, no?
This is a Node.js, right?
Yeah, this one you can close. No, but you can just search in the start menu. There is a desktop icon on your system also. Go to desktop, there is icon on there. Just search for Visual Studio Code. Yeah, pick the first item. Okay, go to File, open folder. Where is the project located? This one? Yeah, open it. Yeah, this has no files in it. So where did you create the project? So in the
So
term,
what
in
I
the
have to
term,
do after open the folder, once
no,
open create that folder,
no. So you have to see where is the folder created in your Visual Studio Code. So go to terminal. Yeah, go to command prompt which you have. No, just command prompt which you have created earlier. See, there is a command prompt open. Yeah, open this. Yeah. So over here, remove this ng, run dir, press enter. See, the project folder, is it created over here? Yes. So the project folder is under users, Senthil, and Edureka News. That's the project folder you have. So you have to go to Visual Studio Code now. Open folder. Go to Go to your user folder, not this one. Go to the user folder. Go to C drive, users, Senthil, and scroll down. There is the Edureka news folder. Yep, over here. Third option.
This one,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Open this. Open folder. Just click on open folder. No, don't select any folder. Just click on the select folder at the last. There is a button at the last. In the dialog box only, there is a button which says select folder. Go to this folder. Go to the Senthil folder. Go inside this folder. Go inside the Edureka news folder. Now on the bottom there is a button. Select folder. In this window there is a click on this. Yes, trust this. Trust all that. Yes. So this is your project folder. Okay, so now run the commands which I've given you and try it over here. Okay, so I got another question. We have given the project name as Edureka News. How come is it choosing the footer component name as Edureka footer? So remember that prefix which we defined. So project name and prefix are two different things. The project name can be something very elaborate about your project name. So it can be like Edureka News Project 2022. But the prefix is something which just defines like a short form for your project. So it can be like EDU 2022. So both of them are two different things. Senthil, please mute yourself. And the prefix is used as a prefix for the selector name. Okay, so cool. So I think we are done for the content today. So we have created a project. We have seen how the Angular project is set up. We have created some components inside it and the module also. So in the next session, we are going to work with these components and use some data in it. So we haven't seen how data binding and all the principles work, and those are planned for the tomorrow session. So once we join the tomorrow session, we're going to cover property binding, services in our component, and loops, how to write loops and conditions in our components to show or hide some different content and add some basic styling to it. So based on what we have in the content, that's something which we have planned for tomorrow or the later sessions too. Okay. So I think we are done with the session for today. I don't think so I have to upload this project right now because it's the same project which you get from Angular CLI. So you can just create a new project. If you have any questions, if you're stuck with any problem, let me know. And then otherwise we can just wrap up the session after this. You don't need to install Git. I will not be using Git also. If you want to use Git, then I can do one thing. I can create a Git repository and I can upload the code on GitHub, and you can pick the code directly from there. The benefit of that is it will give you the direct changes which I've done. If I upload the code, it will not give you the changes which I've done comparative to the yesterday's code or the day before code. Okay, so the content which we have, if we have some slides left in the project or in the assignment, in the LMS, we'll cover them in the tomorrow session because we have spent a little bit time more on setting up the project for everyone. But in the tomorrow session, we'll catch up and understand the basic things. Okay, so we have another 5 minutes, and if you have any questions, let me know. Guys, one small announcement. So there will be a feedback form when you exit this webinar. So please provide the feedback for that. Any feedback which you are giving bad or average, I would request to provide a reasoning for it, so at least I can improve on it. Don't just say it's a bad session or average session. If you're giving a good or excellent, that means you like the session, so that's why you're giving it. But anything which is bad or average needs me, I need some reasoning for it so I can improve in the next session. Okay, Mandeep, I'm sending the request for screen share. Give me a second. Okay, so the assignment, the project, everything, the presentation, everything is available on the LMS. So you must have got an email from Edureka that to access the LMS. So you will get everything on the LMS, presentation, all the assignment code, what you have to complete, and the project details. Everything is on the LMS. Amandeep, I can't see a screen. Okay, it's still loading. 1 second. Amandeep, please allow the screen share. Okay, I got a question how to update the prefix if you already create a component. There is no automated way. You have to manually go to each component and update the prefix. So if you want to update the prefix, first update the prefix in the Angular JSON file, update the prefix to the new one, and go to each component which is already using the prefix and change that. Generally, it is a find and replace kind of a job. So you can even do a find and replace and update the prefix with that. But Angular CLI doesn't have any command for it.
Hi, Praveen.
Hi, Mandeep.
Yeah, hi. I see. Is it not visible?
Yes, I can see a screen.
Okay. Actually, my browser is working.
Okay, so it has crashed. Something happened on it. Close this and open the new tab. Localhost 4200. Localhost colon 4200.
So basically, Praveen, I created these files, HTML, CSS manually because my CLI is not working. So can you please help in resolving the issue? Maybe something is missing from my end.
Yep, sure.
Yeah, can you see my files? A series number. This is the.
So you have to change the selector names. That will be header component.
Or this one?
So if your CLI is not working, actually you can't even run the project. So I think it would be better if you get the CLI running.
Yeah, actually, but still it is working little bit. Like as you can see here, I could see
Okay.
hello world message,
Okay, so
but right.
let me help you out with that. So go to the code. This selector name should be header. No, it should be Edureka header. So line number 4, it should be Edureka header.
But I think I gave my. Oh, please, I'll continue with that. Hyphen header.
Edureka header, yeah. Yeah, and go to the app module. Okay, so I got a question from, yeah, 1 second. I got a question from Lakshmi. Lakshmi, if you need to deploy this application, and exposes it as a web application, then you need to get hosting. Preferred would be using AWS S3 or any kind of object storage. Different cloud providers provide you object storage similar to AWS S3, and you can deploy the build project from here to it that object storage. And on that cloud provider, then you can map your domain with it. So that is not something which we're going to cover in this session, but you have to buy a domain from Google Domains or GoDaddy, and that domain configuration has to be updated on your cloud provider. Yeah, so you have added it over here. Yes, now it should work. Go to the browser. Nope, still giving the error. Okay. What is the reason? Directive header component imported over here. Okay, go to your app component. HTML, app component HTML. Okay, so you're just writing, you didn't added the text over here. So write element Edureka header. Yep. Okay, got a question. Need to install XAMPP or MySQL? No, you don't need it. The Angular CLI provides you the development server. You don't need that. Can we use terminal in Visual Studio Code to create components? You can use it, but if you are using a Windows machine, the ng command may not be registered with it, and that creates a problem. So that's why I was covering it through the command prompt for Windows users. But if you're using a Mac machine, that will be registered properly. Even you can try it out. If it doesn't work, then you have to rely on the command prompt only. No, working. Okay, what's the error now? Compiler. Save this. What is there? Can you go back to the code? Something is wrong in the app component only. No, go to app module. Sorry, something is wrong in the app module. So you have app declaration. So add the, okay, yeah, that's the problem. So your header component is to be added in the declaration, not in the imports. Line number 50, you can remove that and add it to the line number 10, after line number 10. Guys, if you have any questions, you can stay back. Otherwise, you can drop off from the session. Please fill up the feedback form after the session. Thank you, everyone. Okay, yeah, now it's working. Cool. That fixes the problem.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, guys, let's meet tomorrow, and we'll start working on creating more components and interacting with them using properties and sharing data across them. So we'll see how model and everything works in it. So let's meet tomorrow. Thank you everyone for joining in. Take care. Bye.